Okay, so I'm going to talk about platform traps. This is work in progress with my co-author, Julian Wright, as usual. And we have a working paper, but we're working on this right now. Actually, I think Julian's presenting this in 5 hours in Tokyo time, so it's quite fun. All right, so the premise for this is the following. I think most businesses, if you walk around the street, I can't think of any business that does not depend on a platform. You can have a hotel, you need to basically be on booking.com. If you have a restaurant, it's probably suicidal not to be on Uber Eats or DoorDash. And if you're trying to sell something online, I mean, yes, you can have your website, but obviously you can't really forego Amazon.com or eBay. And the flip side of this, so yes, platforms are very useful for all these businesses because they bring business. But the flip side is platforms end up exploiting their sellers over time in many different ways. And this can be more or less obvious from the beginning. So they can increase fees over time. Initially, there's only one or two fees, and then over time, platforms start introducing the option to advertise, but then you feel like it's no longer an option. I have to advertise because everybody else is advertising. If I'm not advertising, then I'm not going to appear on the first page, and then basically like I have no business. They can use algorithmic and design changes, which sometimes are very subtle, but that basically increase competition between sellers. So what platforms, for example, could do is to increase price competition. So they can make prices very salient so that if you're a seller, like if I want to appear at the top, I want to be chosen, I just have to lower my price like drastically. And they can also make other design changes that subtly take control over the customers away from the sellers. And then basically the platform becomes the primary point of touch. There's a very nice, actually, so Chris Dixon from Andreessen Horowitz has this very nice post, which now has become a book on, so he's very interested in Web3, so blockchain. And one of the reasons he gives is that blockchain is partially can quote unquote solve this problem. So it's this idea that with Web2 platforms, you have this relationship with users. So his point is initially when platforms are starting off, obviously they need to attract sellers and participants because without those, they have no value. So then it's like, this is the attract phase. But once they become established, once network effects kick in, then I'm no longer dependent on the next seller. So now things shifts and the platform has all the power. So that's what he calls the extract stage. So like I've attracted enough sellers and now like I can basically increase prices and sellers have no choice because everybody's stuck with me. And that can take many forms. So I thought this graph is quite nice. This is kind of what we're interested in. The interesting question here is if sellers, and by this point, I think most businesses kind of understand this dynamic. I mean, people are no longer naive to this. We've seen a lot of platforms throughout their life cycle. So if sellers know that platforms will end up exploiting them, why would you participate in the first place? So I'll actually give you an example, which is quite current. So Apple is apparently having a hard time recruiting big name developers for the Vision Pro, the VR hands and part of the VR headsets. And part of the reasons a lot of developers say we don't want to be beholden to the Vision Pro as app developers have become beholden to the Apple App Store. It's like we don't want to help Apple build another powerful platform that we're still like, we end up dependent on. So this is like a very real, like by now it's kind of everybody understands where this is going. So it's an interesting question to ask, like, what is the mechanism through which platforms are able to attract sellers, even though kind of everybody's anticipating this exploitation at the end of the line. All right, so we do in this paper, we provide a theoretical notion of a platform trap. So what does a platform trap mean? It's basically, we show that agents can voluntarily join the platform, even though in the end, all of them are worse off. So there's no irrationality here. So at the moment where each agent is deciding to join the platform, the platform makes it individually rational for an agent to join. However, at the end, everybody says, I wish the platform weren't here, and I wish all of us stayed away from the platform, which is what makes this interesting. So the key mechanisms, I'll just give you the mechanism in the context of a marketplace. However, what I want to point out is that this is, the model is quite general. This works for marketplaces, obviously, but also works for other kinds of platforms. So in case of a marketplace, the idea is the following. As the platform gets more sellers, so you get sellers to participate on the platform, you're drawing more buyers to the platform, and you're drawing them away from the seller's direct channels. So when a buyer decides to move to the platform or to join the platform, there's some sellers from everybody's direct channel that go to the platform. And as a result, that takes the wind off the sails of everybody else who's outside the platform, so that the next seller is actually even more incentivized to join the platform, because my direct channel now is less valuable because these idiots basically joined before me, and now I have no choice. And essentially, like, since we can't coordinate, essentially kind of unravels. So we all end up joining the platform, even though, so basically there's a collective action problem. We all end up joining because it's individually rational to do so. So the platform makes it individually rational for sellers to join sequentially. But at the end, basically, the platform exploits this lack of coordination between agents. And in the model, the way the platform exploits this, it's able to increase fees over time, and it extracts fees to a point where if sellers could have coordinated at day or t equals 0, they would not have joined. So I'll give you a sense. So I have two more slides here. I have one slide in which I can just show you a brief, like just a very simple version of the model. I think I have time to do that. So the logic of the dynamics is the following. Again, the model has rational agents. We're not assuming any kind of irrationality. The agents make sequential decisions. So you get the platform approaches basically one agent at a time and makes them an offer to join the platform. And the point is, the platform can price discriminate, right? So their earlier agents, if you think about the graph that I showed earlier agents are more important to attract for the platform because that determines whether the platform builds network effects. Once I got a sufficient number of earlier agents, now I can start increasing prices, right? And basically, depending on the payoff functions, some early agents may be what we call pivotal, meaning you absolutely need to get those agents to get the platform off the ground. And yes, you're going to have to charge lower prices to those, and those agents are going to be better off because they get lower prices. However, once you got those on board, now I can basically exploit later agents. So typically what happens is earlier agents are better off, later agents are worse off. But overall, it's quite possible that everybody's worse off. That's kind of what we show. So yeah, you need to get a credit. So there's a lot of themes here, which I guess are, especially if you lived in the platform literature for a while, they're kind of their critical mass and things like that. But the part that's, I think, surprising that we haven't seen anywhere else is making explicit this mechanism through which everybody is worse off at the end. I mean, that's not entirely trivial. So essentially, like, yes, agents are damned if they do and damned if they don't. So if you're an individual agent, like, it's just not a good idea for you not to participate because you anticipate everybody else will. And because everybody else will, you're actually going to be worse off if you're the only holdout. So obviously, the only option here is like if everybody can, it's a bit like, developers in the App Store unite and just everybody decide boycott the platform. And by the way, there are examples around the world. There was a boycott of the DoorDash equivalent in Mumbai in India by the local restaurants, which were fed up by the platform's requirements, and they all somehow coordinate to just boycott the platform for a week. And they managed to extract some concessions. But you can see how that's very difficult to do, like especially in situations where agents are very small, it's very difficult for them to coordinate. So the one thing I would mention here, I think the most examples that first come to mind, and admittedly, those are the best applications, are marketplace settings. So it's sellers or restaurants or hotels and then users on the other side. However, I think you can make similar points with, say, individuals joining social networks like Facebook and Instagram. So the idea is like, if I'm the only person that doesn't join, one of these social networks, you feel a little bit stupid. Like it takes away, I know, some of your social status. If you're not there, it's like, hey, what are you doing? Why are you not on the platform? Same thing, for example, with news organizations signing deals with Facebook or Google. So you can try to be the only holdout news organization, not advertising on Facebook or Google. But the problem is, obviously, as more and more users start their news journey there, it would be kind of suicidal not to be there. And again, it's the same logic of unraveling. Okay, so I'll show you the simplest version of this model just to give you a flavor of what we're doing. There's a lot of different extensions, but this is just a baseline. So imagine it's one platform, just two independent agents. So this is not going to be two-sided. So what we have here is just think about agents with straight up direct network effects, but it subsumes marketplace settings. So we're going to say there's two payoffs. There's the payoff for the agents when they join the platform. That's B. So you can think of B of N, where N can be 0, 1, or 2, because there's only two agents. And that's what's the payoff to an agent when small n agents join the platform. And then U of N is the outside option. So if you stay outside the platform, if an agent stays outside the platform, they're going to get U of N, which is decreasing in the same n. So the more agents join the platform, your payoff from staying outside the platform is going to be decreasing. And I would say that's kind of the key assumption, the differentiator relative to, I guess, most of the previous network effects literature. So it's not just that we have a network effect on the platform, which is B, that's very familiar. It's also the fact that your outside option is getting worse as the platform is getting better. As the platform attracts more and more users, being outside the platform is this idea that it takes the wind out of the sails of everybody else, right? It takes the wind, like as Amazon increases, as Amazon becomes a default option for people to start searching for stuff to shop, everything else kind of gets worse. So it's not just like, yes, it's better to be on Amazon. It's actually worse if you're trying to stay outside Amazon. So, and then platform, so what we assume is platform approaches the two agents sequentially, and it makes each agent an offer, P of K. And then we're going to make just an assumption just to make things reasonable, B of 2. So if both agents join the platform, the value they get on the platform is better than if one of them try to stay outside the platform. Otherwise, the platform will not be viable, basically. So there's two cases. If it's enough for one agent to join the platform to create more value than if both agents stayed outside the platform. So B of 1 is greater than U of 0. So that's basically the best case for the platform. That means that all I need to get is one agent, and then I'm already doing better than the outside option. Then basically the platform can extract maximum prices, and the maximum price is B of 2 minus U of 1, which is basically you're making each agent indifferent between joining the platform and staying outside. That's the most you can extract. And not surprisingly, perhaps, each agent is left with actually less, so U of 1, which is less than U of 0, and that'll be the payoff if the two agents could talk and say, hey, let's just not accept whatever the platform offers, just refuse it. So let's stay outside the platform. And then the other case is B of 1 smaller than U of 0. So this is basically the case in which the platform has a harder time. So you need a critical mass. In this case, critical mass is one agent. Actually, in this case, you need both agents to make the platform viable. So this is a little bit harder. So in this case, the platform needs to charge a lower price to the first agent. So the first agent is critical. I absolutely need to get the first agent. Otherwise, I can't get the second one. So you have to charge them B of 2 minus U of 0. And that's actually lower, obviously, than B of 2 minus U of 1, because recall, U is decreasing. And that's possibly a negative price. So you might actually have to subsidize the first agent, and then you can charge maximum price to the second agent. And in this case, second agent is definitely worse off. The first agent is actually indifferent between being on the platform, being outside, and that's because the first agent basically determines the success of the platform, and they can extract something. And one of the, I guess, the corollaries here, which is interesting but perhaps not surprising, is that the platform can be viable. So the platform has prices that give it positive profits and that basically get both agents to participate, yet it's inefficient in the sense that it would be better off, like the agents would be better off if everybody stayed outside. So like B of 2 can be smaller than U of 0. So it'd be a higher payoff to stay outside and everybody to ignore the platform. But yet the platform can play this scheme in which I get agents to join me, and the platform extracts some revenue. So that's the idea. And then we do a lot of extensions, but fundamentally it's about, again, how platforms get everybody to fall into this honey trap.
Model. I like the term because you actually captured intuitions nicely. Two thoughts. One of these, clearly it's a coordination problem. So can you introduce coordination mechanisms that would help the partners, the platform, actually recapture some of that surplus? So could you introduce some other mechanisms that would undo the phenomenon? The second question is, can you design it in such a way that it works with an antitrust law? That's one of the interesting challenges has been you're trying to get collaboration among competitors, which under normal circumstances is illegal, but here in the context of these strong network effects is actually desirable.
So on the first one, one of the interesting extensions that we have is basically you can think about having coalitions of agents. So obviously agents, because there's a coordination issue, the more agents can get together and say, we're going to act as a group and going to hold out as a group, you're going to get a better price and you're all going to be better off. There's an interesting question here. So imagine there's multiple coalitions of different sizes. And I can turn the question to the platform. And there's a question like, I'm trying to strategically attract everybody. Should I first go for smaller or for larger coalitions? I can do a poll here. It's not entirely obvious, and we kind of show this. There's an intuition that you basically should go after the smaller coalitions first because they're easier to attract, and then the larger coalitions then doesn't become as critical. But it's actually not necessarily true. Like basically what it comes down to is like you want to attract a coalition that has that has the highest effect per capita on the outside option. So if I'm the platform strategically, what I want to do is basically attract agents that basically just completely shoot down the outside option, and therefore everybody feels like screw it, I need to join the platform. On the second point, so this is I should have emphasized this. So when we have longer presentation, I think both Drew and I talk about this at the end. I think it's very important that we both feel very strongly. This should not be interpreted as like regulators that you need to jump and absolutely do something about this. Like so I feel very strongly. This is not to say, oh my God, regulators should say like platforms are awful. It's like no, I think it's important to be aware that this happens. Now you can the more reasonable thing would be I think it's perfectly fine for regulators to basically turn a blind eye to saying, like, if there's a coalition of app developers in the App Store, you might interpret this as, Apple will say, oh my God, this is collusion. And the regulators should probably say, no, they're just trying to basically make sure just like, for example, to some degree, to me, it's like, it's not a lot different from unions, right? So it should be like a app developer union or something like that. Like I think it's perfectly fine for them to say like we can discuss like kind of the developers for the Apple Vision Pro maybe get together. You shouldn't discuss price, but they should be allowed to say like, do we join or do we not join? I think I think I would be okay with that.
So it's interesting. You might be able to create some user rights, ironically connected to the presentation on misinformation. If they could gain information on what's happening in the marketplace overall, they might be able to form coalitions from which they could reclaim their own power without the need of government intervention. So you would enable the market to restore its own efficiency by rejiggering the rights of participants.
Yeah, so I agree. Actually, that's a very nice connection. Yeah, I think basically the idea, and by the way, I think this can be provided by the market. I think part of the Chris Dixon's blockchain thing is you can use Web3 as a credible commitment. So one of the nice things about Web3, you can view it. So if you think this is a problem, and if I'm the platform, I understand this may be a problem. Some people might be put off and like they expect to be exploited. What you could do is try to have a credible commitment, say not to increase fees over time. Now, the question is like, how do I provide a credible commitment? One of them is like use blockchain, or you can use this kind of mechanisms that allow users to, I guess, vote as a block or hold out as a block. I think there's all kinds of interesting implications. I agree. I just wouldn't go to regulation immediately.
Thank you, Andrei.
Thank you.